Yes. So the international break over in the next week, and Borussia Dortmund rest of the season playing for the rest of the season mainly after the international break of remaining matches in the league slash Bundesliga and two matches in a Champions League quarter-final to play v Barcelona. And yeah, so Borussia Dortmund building season next season. It's potentially similar squad slash transfers with or without European football, maybe next season for Borussia Dortmund. So for Borussia Dortmund slash BFLB, 11th in the Bundesliga after 26 matches played, and over an amount of points off the top six, maybe close to maybe two distance for any European spot for next season, two distance from a Champions League spot and maybe Europa League spot. Europa Conference League maybe at highest, but Borussia Dortmund maybe two distance from that maybe. So yes, it may be potentially a building season with no European football for a season or so. Like, having said that, yeah, there'd be something from the club to still be in European football competition after a season or so. Like, with the membership revenue, like over 200,000 members, top three memberships in European football, and like 81,000 set out like in the stadium, like in the stadium revenue and like in the club's recruitment model. Yeah, they'd still have something to build with next season. And Niko Kovac, yeah, tactical type manager slash coach. I'd say I have a thing that he'll manage slash coach his deal. So the rest of his season, a full season next season. That's my thing with that. Whether Niko Kovac competes for a trophy with Bayern Munich for the Klassiker culture of the club, well, that's another thing. But yeah, with Borussia Dortmund in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, I'd say that rather than the potential league finish this season, we'll have Kovac at Borussia Dortmund for the start of next season, I'd say. And yeah, like Niko Kovac started from 11th in the league this season, and with the playoffs to play in the Champions League, and Borussia Dortmund had two potentially competitive matches drawn in the playoffs in round of 16 rounds in the Champions League. And having played those rounds, the Sporting Lisbon won 3-0 in aggregate with a 3-0 away win the first leg, and then won 3-2 the Lille in aggregate with a 2-1 away win for a 3-2 in aggregate. Yeah, having game managed and utilised enough of the matches over the two matches in those two rounds and into the quarterfinals of the Champions League after two potentially competitive rounds drawn, the Sporting Lisbon and Lille, and having won those matches all right enough over two matches in those two rounds. I'll say that in the Champions League with Borussia Dortmund with a big cultural cup quarterfinal type European competition to play the Barcelona. I'll say just from that, rather than the potential league finish, that Niko Kovac is at Borussia Dortmund at the start of next season, and maybe the full season, so maybe the rest of the deal. And I'd say, yeah, like Niko Kovac, like, yeah, has team set without the ball, as a matter of game management, as well as to utilise enough with the ball. And yeah, in a full season, I'd say maybe fifth. I'd say maybe top five. I'd say maybe fifth. So maybe Europa League after maybe one season of European football. But I'd say Borussia Dortmund, I'd say in a full season, he'd maybe have them in a European competition for the season after, then I'd say maybe like compete for a DFB Pokal with Bayern Munich. Then yeah, like all right, yeah, all right. Then Kovac will start the season after. Yeah, all right, compete for a DFB. Like say in a DFB Pokal final with Bayern Munich and have a competitive match in the final with Bayern Munich in Berlin in a DFB Pokal final. Then yeah, I'd be like, yeah, well, competed for a trophy with Bayern Munich. All right, start next season after rather. Yeah, all right. But I'll say that maybe in a full season it'd be fifth, but maybe quarterfinals of the DFB Pokal. Whether Kovac should compete with Bayern Munich for a domestic trophy, I'm a bit 50-50 with that. But Borussia Dortmund, maybe a season or so about European football, but in a full season, I'd say Kovac have enough all right enough matches and results for a European spot compared to this season. Yes, I'd say so. Yes. So yeah, and with the over the two matches of the Sporting Lisbon and the matches in the Champions League, yeah, like that maybe says that. I'd say the board would then maybe have him for maybe for the rest of his deal in a full season next season, maybe potentially. Well, from the start of the season anyway. But yes, so Borussia Dortmund's remaining matches. Well, there's a Club World Cup to play after the Bundesliga and the Champions League, but the remaining matches in the Bundesliga, Mainz at home next week, next Sunday, away to Freiburg, potentially competitive away match. First leg of the Champions League quarter-final away to Barcelona, then to Clasico away to Bayern Munich, and then the second leg of the Champions League at home to Barcelona. And then in the Bundesliga, Borussia Mönchengladbach at home, Hoffenheim away, Wolfsburg at home, Bayer Leverkusen away, and then Holstein Kiel at home is the last Bundesliga match of the season. And then a bit after that in the Club World Cup, have the group matches to play in that v Fluminense, Mamelodi Sundowns, and Ulsan HT. But yeah, like I'd say my prediction is maybe that like predicted the rest of the season of the Bundesliga bit on the predictor be Bayern Munich as champions, but maybe on the same points by Leverkusen, but with Bayern Munich maybe winning it over the season still, having outscored enough teams. So maybe on the same points by Leverkusen, but still win it over the season, having outscored enough teams to win it over the season. Frankfurt third, I'd still say they'll be the next highest after Bayern Munich and Bayer Leverkusen. Borussia Mönchengladbach, good running, so they may finish fourth. They have Tim Kleindienst, maybe like next Germany number 9, a player that I'd still say would be an achievable signing next season for Borussia Dortmund, and say a bit of that in the next amount of minutes. Mainz fifth, yeah, I'd say they may have points for maybe Europa League spot, and I'll say RB Leipzig for the final European spot and a Conference League spot. From this bit, yeah, RB Leipzig may maintain a points European spot. Stuttgart, then just missing it maybe by 6 points or so. Still well coached, but just not as many wins as last season, maybe. And then Freiburg in 8th, and then I'd say Borussia Dortmund in 9th on 48 points or so. And then, yeah, I'll say about maybe 8th at highest rather than 6th. And I'll say maybe finish 9th, and maybe a season of a building season, no European football. But yeah, for Borussia Dortmund, well, I'd say like, well, players like it's potentially similar transfers or squad with or without European football next season anyway. Like I'd say Jamie Gittins probably sold. Julian Brandt may be sold, like one of the best players from last season's Champions League run to the final. Same with Gregor Kobel, the keeper. And Serhou Guirassy is a forward in Guirassy. Well, this is probably Pete Guirassy, so yeah, he may be sold. Yes, albeit after a season, but he is one of the top goal scoring players / forwards in the Champions League. So just from that, yes, he may be sold to a team, maybe. I'd say for maybe a replacement for Jamie Gittins, Igor Paixão, like left winger with potential from Feyenoord, talented player. Diane Ramsch signed from Ajax on loan at Copenhagen, and then at Borussia Dortmund next season. So maybe a Gregor Kobel potential replacement next season, maybe. And then I'd say, and this would maybe be a forward that would score maybe more of a Niklas Füllkrug number of goals rather than the Sergio Guirassy or Haaland, but Tim Kleindens from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Yep, that player. Like rated to maybe be Germany's next number 9, maybe. I'd say maybe score more than Niklas Füllkrug of around 16 goals a season rather than 25 plus, but he is an option of a forward. He'll score a number of goals. To the Haaland, Guirassy level, I'm not sure of those numbers, but maybe 16 goals. And yeah, he's an in-the-box striker and yeah, an option to play the ball to. And yeah, he's an all right enough forward. And yeah, I'd say that it's an achievable signing. Like, yes, Borussia Mönchengladbach may be playing in Europe next season and Borussia Dortmund maybe not, but I'd still say for Borussia Dortmund that's potentially an achievable signing, yes. So I'd still be saying for maybe Tim Kleindens, yes. Yes, rather, / yeah. But yeah, and there's other players, and these are maybe a bit 50-50 that may or may not be sold from Borussia Dortmund with next season, and some of these are maybe a bit 50-50. So then there's maybe more of a squad for like signings and loans as well, a bit with spots in the squad maybe. And this is the so maybe Giovanni Reina played the amount of minutes this season a bit. That's 50-50. May or may not be sold. Niklas Süle may be sold. Yeah, squad player an option, but a squad player may or may not be sold. Silo Ozchar may or may not be sold. Pascal Gross 50-50, so may or may not be sold. Marcel Sabitzer and Jan Couto. That's yeah. Oh, Jan Couto's on loan anyway, so yeah. Marcel Sabitzer, yeah, I'd say that one's 50-50. Sabitzer sold, yeah, that would be another. Yeah, Sabitzer sold. Well, there's still Felix Nemeka that would maybe start. Yeah, Sabitzer and Gross sold. Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that's then. So yeah, that's then 2 to 3. Yeah, that's then 3 more main midfielders in the squad to like the main midfielders and a spot in the squad. But I'd say an amount of those are 50-50 anyway. But yes, so that is Borussia Dortmund building season next season, potentially, for the club.